In the last few years, we've seen waves of games from the not-so-distant past back, with HD remakes or sometimes complete sequel reimaginings. Some of these releases are pure nostalgia, not really adding anything new and simply allowing us to revisit fond memories of gaming's past. Others seem completely different, and while they may be good or even great games, will often leave many gamers wondering why they bother to incite the namesake aside from easy sales. God of War, the new entrance from the 5-year dormant action-adventure hack-and-slash series, strikes an excellent balance between these two worlds. At every turn it remembers what made the old games great, but also manages to feel new and relevant in the current gaming climate. There was a fear going in that too much of the roots of God of War had been lost. This new world is so rich and beautiful, and the strong focus between Kratos and his son Atreus' relationship starts you out wondering if this will have the action you remember from the old titles. Watching trailers and reveal videos, I was already positioned to expect a God of War game in name only, but thankfully when playing as Kratos, your actions speak just as loud as your words. Combat and puzzles are still king. There's no walking simulator here. It's a climbing, opening chests, fighting, and tearing apart your enemies simulator instead. It may lack some of the hyperviolence and sexuality of the previous titles, but this feels right. Kratos is older, he's journeying with his son to take his wife's ashes to the top of a mountain. His character has changed and matured, and so have his actions, and it never seems lacking or less like a God of War game for this, just different. Father! Taking down enemies is just as satisfying as it's always been, with solid weight to your weapon and attacks. I spent the first half of my playthrough smiling stupidly on every axe recall. Often I'd forget which hapless enemy or wall I'd left it in until needing it again, and the feel of it flying through the game with my controller vibrating in unison with the pulp of catching it in Kratos' palm never got old. It's that kind of care and attention to detail which makes God of War such a joy to pore over. The level of consideration makes the world appear huge and open despite being fairly linear and only having set paths. I was often tricked into thinking I was going wherever I wanted, off on some random explore, only to find this was the direction I was meant to be travelling in all along. It somehow mimics the feel of games where you can look out into the distance, see a mountain, and know you can climb it, without ever needing to deliver on that promise. At some point this visage broke for me, and I became wise to the trickery, but this only made me more intrigued by what was going on, rather than disconnected.
I have known many spirits. They are all liars.
Bosses and mini-bosses show up from time to time, and the lack of variation here is my biggest criticism. There are only really 3 or so unique boss fights throughout the main quest, and a lot of the others are just identical variations with higher difficulty settings, which is a little disappointing. There's definitely more variation if you choose to explore and complete side quests, and you will be rewarded with incredibly difficult tasks. The unique story boss fights are also incredibly good, and it definitely felt like more nonsense was at play to achieve this. The final battle especially had me clambering for each checkpoint at the final portion of my health. Each time I was suckered into believing I'd made some last-minute hero save, when in hindsight I doubt that was true. I don't care though, as at the time it gave me such a rush and sense of accomplishment that I can't help but look at it as game development done right. God of War is a beautiful game, which seemed to outsmart my stupid human brain at every turn, tricking it into feeling good or thinking it had some semblance of control. It's also paired with a great and simple story, which may seem small for the series' usually lofty endeavours, but accomplishes more by encouraging exploration and discovery rather than any sort of end goal. There's no looming evil to defeat, no universe to be saved, nothing to distract you from this world that was lovingly crafted to trick you at every turn, which is perhaps even more fitting once you finish the main story. I truly enjoyed my time with God of War, as both a return to the series and a brand new game. Its seamless blending of old and new plays served to create something quite unique in the current scope of video games, and I really hope we see more like it in the future.
Remember what I told you about expectations, boy.
Keep them low. I remember. Still, good feeling.